And when it comes to the conversation, the more philosophical conversation of like, what is consciousness and like what is reality? What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to actually to exist? We're really, really good. And it sets up this dynamic of like, do you save the few but sacrifice the many? Or do you sacrifice the few for the many? And I think this goes like, say, the trolley problem. Like if you got a trolley, one person is laid on the tracks, and that person is really dear to you, and then you got two people or more on another track, and you have to allow the train to run over the one person you love, or several people that you don't know. Which is more ethical? Which one would you choose in that? Which is, I think Phrolova would definitely choose the ones that she loves compared, and she doesn't really care about the other ones. The rest of the people that aren't dear to her. So that puts the actions of Rover, like people are very like become more sympathetic to Phrolova and her struggles through her life. But at the end of the day, she did join the Phraxis, and she's been with the Phraxis for hundreds of years. According to law, she hasn't been that much of an active member, but regardless, she's part of this organization to get what she wants, and they're using her to get what they want, and in doing so she's a part of that, and she is also just as equally culpable for that actions as she is also a high-ranking member of that organization. It'd be just like saying, let's put it in a more real-world situation, like Al-Qaeda, for example. Maybe let's just say something, let's say you're a financial manager for Al-Qaeda. You don't participate in any of the attacks. You don't participate in any of the bombings. You don't do any of that. You're not really a fundamentalist, but you are part of the organization, and you are just as equally culpable as anyone else in the management of that organization. I don't really think you'd get much of a pass, even if you didn't actively participate in the slaughter. Although I don't really know. I do think she probably did participate in a fair bit of slaughter of people in there. Yeah, she did. Like I said, she did attack Jinsho. She did. Like she summoned up all the tacit discourse. So she's definitely not innocent by any stretch of imagination in this. And but when it comes to her actual mindset, again, pun not intended, the mindset of like she believes that these reverberations that exist after a person has passed away, they are just as much alive, or that that they are in a sense of a type of limbo, that she can bring them back from that limbo into a form that would essentially give them immortality, like putting their consciousness into a tacit discord. This goes on to the question of like what's referred to as mind uploading, because the brain is just at its very base core is just a very, very complex machine, well, a complex organ, a complex machine that runs on electrical signals that fire on all these different nodes throughout the brain, really, to tell our body what to do, but also to inform our consciousness, for lack of a better term, of what to think and what to say or how to react. But then it raises the question of like, is our consciousness related directly to those electrical signals? In which case you get more to the philosophical determinism position of like, everything is just merely a cause and effect of everything else. So this neuron firing over here fires this one over here, which fires this one over here, and then everything I'm saying right now and everything I'm thinking is just a case of cause and effect of everything that's happened in the past so far in my experience of life. So do we really have any consciousness, or are we just reacting to the thing that happened before? This goes to, again, this is more talking about the more general philosophy, the more general problem, what's called the mind-body problem of, you've got two trains of thoughts on this one. The more determinist thought is like, the mind, the brain, the mind is intrinsically linked to consciousness, and the consciousness is the sense of self, and that's called monolism, if I remember correctly, like monolism, like the oneness. And whereas the other train of thought is called dualism, where they are separate entities. And dualism is, and I mentioned this before as well in my first playthrough, it's well associated with Descartes Descartes, as in, I said this before, of like, I think, therefore I am, of like, because this is like really boiling it all down. Descartes believed that because you could never really trust anything that your eyes see, because in the end, your eyes are just sending signals to the brain, and are you really seeing anything? Because your consciousness isn't really seeing anything at all. Your consciousness is not visible. It's just reacting to the visual stimuli of the eyes through the optic nerves into the brain, right? And so he argues that you can't really be sure of anything, and goes into skepticism, like ultra skepticism there. And the only thing that you can be sure of, because you can doubt everything, but you can't doubt that you think. Because doubting is a type of thinking. And if you think, then you are doubting. If you are doubting, then you are thinking. And one cannot exist without the other. And if one exists at all, then you can say for certainty that the thing that thinks, the thing that doubts, exists. And that's where you get the term, I think, therefore I am. Or I doubt, therefore I am. But then that leads on to another question of like, does the consciousness exist at all? And if it does, it goes more to monolism now, dualism as well. Let's say, for example, you know, like, guys, you got Star Trek. You know Star Trek. You know when they do the teleporter, like you teleporter from the ship onto the planet's surface, right? And what they and maybe I'm misunderstanding here. But my understanding of the teleporter is that it takes away all the atoms, and then rearranges all those atoms again on the location that it's been set to the coordinates, right? But when you do that, the you that's on the ship, is that still the same you that's on the planet's surface? Because that's kind of going into, I don't know if you guys know of the ship of Theseus problem. If you have a ship and has all the different boards, if you take away one board and put in a new board, and you put that old board to the side and do again another and another and another, at what point does it stop being the original ship? And if you use those boards you took away to rebuild the same ship, this was brought up in Avengers actually, and all those boards you took away, you use those boards to build another ship. Which is the true original ship? The one that's just been replaced, or the one that you've used to build out of the old boards? This goes, again, this actually has another term as well called the swamp man problem. A swamp man problem is a philosophical thought exercise that says that there's a swamp, right? And at that swamp, there's an electrical storm. And a bolt of lightning, there's a person in this storm, the bolt of lightning hits that person and disintegrates all of their matter. Like nothing. But at the very same time, at another location, another bolt of lightning hits something in the swamp and magically like rearranges all those atoms into something that would think and believe and act and react in much the same way as the person that just got disintegrated. This thing here, is it truly the person that got disintegrated, or is it something different? This goes again to the Star Trek problem and also just like the ship of Theseus problem. But the thing is though, the argument for this being that's been created from the swamp, it's literally called the swamp man, it acts and reacts in much the same way as the person that just got obliterated. But it's what's called a philosophical zombie. A philosophical zombie doesn't actually feel, doesn't actually think, doesn't actually emote, doesn't actually have any sorts of consciousness. However, this philosophical zombie will react as if it does, as if it feels, as if it is actually reacting. It doesn't feel pain, but it doesn't feel pain. So if I get, okay, this is not a needle, but I've got a box cut here. I'm not going to open it, but this is like blades here, blades away. Okay, just so blades away. So if I get a blade and I go here, the swamp man, the philosophical zombie, would not actually feel anything hitting it, but a normal person would go ow, but it would act as if it did, if that makes sense. And it actually brought that up as well, like in here, in this here, they're putting the consciousness into these tacit discords, but are they actually putting the consciousness into the discords? Or are they just acting like they have? Are those tacit discords just philosophical zombies? Because they're undying, well, the original tacit discord, they're undying, unfeeling, and just have no emotion and no sense of self. So they would act like they do if they put this consciousness in, but they won't. But they aren't. For a massively advanced human civilization existed capable of colonizing other planets and deep space exploration. During the journeys, they explored many worlds and encountered other forms of life, whether the same species or not. Some are being driven to replace humanity, capable of perfectly imitating humans, Swamp Man, while others wish to stand as adversaries rather than becoming their gods. I mean, yeah, it's the philosophical conversations that got brought up just in this here of like, is it truly possible to upload your mind? And if you did, are you actually there or not? Was really interesting. But then it also raised the questions, because you know, like we mentioned earlier, that Phrolova, 1 second, let me just bring it up here. Here. Resonator Phrolova's awakening occurred at the time of her death, granting her the ability to tune the frequencies of her target and alter their melodies based on the understanding of critical frequency structuring of matters. Talking about the frequency structuring, the structuring of molecules, the structuring of matter. But it says here that at the time of her death, so she died. So Phrolova is, for lack of a better term, a literal, well, could be argued to be a swamp man. Like this, well, not a lightning bolt, but the meteor came down, destroyed everything, destroyed her. She died, but was somehow, I don't know, for lack of a better term, magically alive after that event. And she is, well, it was mentioned earlier, she is herself half human and half tacit discord. So Phrolova is a, well, swamp woman. Yes, a swamp man. She's a swamp woman. The Phrolova we met, we saw earlier in the white dress Phrolova, she's dead. This Phrolova is not actually that same Phrolova, depending on how you approach that argument. If you know these philosophical arguments, again, about the nature of consciousness, then yeah, it does make you think. Point being, about, I just mentioned the swamp man. Phrolova could be argued to be a swamp woman in this philosophical argument, you know?